Recently connected with another marketing expert who really knows his stuff. In fact, the only thing he doesn't know is the MSP world. But that's okay, because you and I are always looking for new ideas, right? And he's got a ton of really good ideas that are working for other types of businesses, which we're going to share with you right now. Just a heads up, by the way, in this interview, I mention a live event that the author Chris Voss was due to be doing in London, here in the UK. And about 2 days after I did this interview, that event was cancelled.
I'm Kyle Bailey. I own frontburnermarketing.net, and we specialize in sales training and online marketing for home service businesses.
And just from that very description, you might think, well, what are you doing on Paul's podcast? Because what's that got to do with MSPs? And we are trying an experiment today. You see, for the last 6.5 years or so, almost every single guest we've had on has either been from within the channel or they know the channel really, really well. Now, Kyle, you do know the channel, and I know you've worked with MSPs in the past, but primarily these days, your focus is outside of the channel. And as you say, you work with home service businesses like HVAC, which is air conditioning for those of us that are British, and plumbers and builders and all that kind of stuff. And I know you'll tell us about that in a second. The reason I've got you here is because you've got great marketing knowledge. And I've just in the 10 minutes you and I have been talking before this interview, you've given me some really cool ideas. And I know you're going to do exactly the same on our interview today. So an expert from outside of the channel giving advice to us here inside the channel. Welcome to the show. Just tell us a little bit about your marketing career and what kind of stuff you do now for what kind of businesses.
Yeah, so I've been in sales and stuff for a long time before 2010. 2010 is when I started my agency. It was right when Facebook began their business page movement. Everybody thought that Facebook was going to replace Google, which has been said many times, and that didn't happen. But that's what launched me into the business, and I was almost immediately serving home service businesses. I grew up in the trades, so I always say I've been a lumberjack and a framer, but I've actually done everything that touches the house. I've installed AC, I've done roofing, remodeling, the whole 9 yards. So I love the trades, and so I love serving them and helping them out. Yeah.
And you help them with their marketing, so that's the kind of the websites. It's the same problems that MSPs have, right? Which is a really good presence, credibility, authority, traffic, leads, all of those kind of things.
Right, and then I deal a lot with folks who have a great or IRL, as the kids might say, in real life presence. They do great work. They have great reviews. But then when the customer comes to the website, there's a letdown because that online presence doesn't match it. So we primarily are pulling people into the 21st century as far as look and feel of the website, the execution of the website, and the content piece is really big because those key points of problem solutions that they offer, that needs to be present on the website, early and often. And so that's what we're doing most of the time for our folks.
I think it's interesting. You and I, as I'm going to label us marketing professionals, you and I know that many of the marketing things that MSPs need are exactly the same marketing ingredients that an HVAC firm would need. And obviously there are some differences because they're a B2C, they're a business to consumer business, whereas obviously the vast majority of MSPs are B2B. But you and I know the basic core ingredients are the same for any business, and it is absolutely about engaging with the right people in the right way and influencing them emotionally to pick you, as well as giving their brain the right information it needs to make a decision as well. Let's talk about the one thing that I think your world and my world has most in common, which is differentiation. So you work with businesses that are up against quite aggressive businesses, and do you see the same problem that I see that MSPs have, which is it's very hard for one MSP to differentiate from another?
Yeah, and I would say that MSPs have it a little worse for lots of reasons, mainly because, if I'm a business owner, I don't really know what an MSP does, right? HVAC company fixes my AC. I know that. But that in itself becomes a problem because every HVAC company is saying the same thing. So how do you differentiate? That's always the thing. How do you make yourself stand out? And I'm actually writing a book. It'll be out here within a couple of weeks. And it's going to be called What's Your Story? I don't have the byline for it yet, but the main title is What's Your Story? Connecting your story to your ideal client story. And when one of the podcasts I listened to on your channel was really important because he was talking about how questions that he asked uncovered problems that he didn't know to ask about. And I think that's the most important thing for any business and any sales process is to ask questions. The worst thing you can do going into any type of sales, whether it's content or an in-person sales presentation, is to go in kind of thinking that you kind of have a handle on everything, not being curious. Because it's when you ask that one more question, tell me more about that. Sounds like, if you've ever heard of Chris Voss, he talks a lot about sounds like, seems like, sounds like, feels like. So the two principles he brought to bear for me that just changed my life, like even my personal life, because I use it in everything. So sales training, personal life, everything. Sounds like, seems like, feels like. So it sounds like you're interested in this differentiation thing, and you ask it in a curious way, sometimes with an uplift on the back, and then mirroring the last three things, the last 3 to 5 words they said. If you use that and then try to work it in even into your content, open up places for curiosity. Are you curious about this? Do you have more questions about this? Those are great places to have engagements on your website. And then you want to measure all that so that you're getting these points of pains being revealed. Pain revelation would be a good way to say it. And so these customers are volunteering this pain that they have. Now you just reverse engineer that and talk about that in the front. Tired of this? Tired of not even knowing do you know what your cap is on your Wi-Fi? That was one of the episodes we were talking about. Did you know you even had one? Did you know that could be killing your business? Things like that. Things that, like, the kind of hook that says I might not know something that's hurting me is really powerful. And I would think in MSP there's a treasure trove of those.
Oh, absolutely. Now, I'm going to pause that for 2 seconds. We are going to come back to that because I have a follow-up question. I must first of all explain who Chris Voss is. So Chris Voss is the former FBI chief negotiator for hostage negotiator. He wrote a book. It's one of the best books. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's behind me for Never Split the Difference. There we go.
Yes,
so
Never Split the Difference.
For those watching on YouTube, I've just pulled a book off the shelf. Sorry, for those not watching on YouTube, I've just pulled a book off the shelf. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It's one of the best books on sales you'll ever read because it's not about sales. It's about how to stop the hostages getting killed. And actually, I'm going to see Chris in London, I think in a month's time. He's sold out a stadium to do a talk, nice. Or to do it like a day, which is crazy. So I'm looking forward to that one. So
that's cool.
So that's Chris Voss. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And for all the MSPs watching this, listening to this, get that book, Never Split the Difference, Chris Voss. So back to what you were saying. So you're saying that one of the routes, because obviously there's always lots of different ways of doing something, but one of the routes for differentiation that you see works well is where you explore someone's unknown pains. So the example you gave, and I know the interview you're talking about of one of our previous podcast episodes, and our guest was talking about that the client was frustrated with their Wi-Fi speeds, and they didn't know that the Wi-Fi speeds were being capped by whatever it was, and the MSP became the hero by figuring out there was a cap in the first place and then removing the cap. And so give us a practical example, Kyle, of how would an MSP, because MSPs are uncovering those kind of things all the time, but how do you know which are the ones which will attract other future clients and which are the ones which are just a bit too techie and aren't relevant?
Yeah, I think a strategy session with somebody outside is a great way. Somebody who understands how to ask questions is really, really powerful because, it's the forest for the trees thing, right? You get so close to your business and what you're doing every day, you don't realize, the difference between this and this. This is the normal thing. This is the one that's outstanding that will blow the doors open on your business because people don't know this one as well, right? And so getting outside counsel, that's one of those places where it's really powerful. But getting some kind of breakdown of what you do every day, probably doing this a couple of times a year, just going, okay, what are the most common questions we had in the last year? I would imagine that even MSP is getting hit by the AI questions. Can I just get AI to run my MSP? Will AI do this? Then you start recycling that into producing new content, new interviews, new whatever you're putting out there, social media post. And so what you're doing is you're taking their story, because their pains and fears, like what are the top 5 fears about engaging with the MSP provider? What are the top 5 horror stories that you already know about? You know this field well enough. They probably already popped in your head. And so how do you turn that around into content that's going to be customer facing? And then that encounters them as they're walking in metaphorically to your business, because they're going to check you out online first, especially for MSP, right? So what is that welcome mat that meets them? Is it just another generic bank of servers? We were talking about people using the same stock photo. Go out there and look at your top 10 competition, and what does it look like? How can you be different and still meet their need? You don't want to put a stuffed animal on the front of your website to be different, right? But you want to find out a way. You're throwing a curveball, everybody else is throwing a fastball. That's kind of where it comes. That's baseball metaphor. I don't know if that works.
Yeah, kind of works. The kind of baseball metaphor works with everything, I think. But yeah, no, I love that. And I think what I like about this approach is it's so completely different from what most MSPs do. So, I'm sure you have the same experience with the industries you serve.
Yes,
I'll look at, in fact, just at the back end of 2025, I did a thing in my MSP Marketing Facebook group where I offered like a mini website review, and I did about 50 of them in a week. And so it was a real reminder for me, just let's say 47 of those websites were the same. And these are websites of MSPs all over the world, and 47 of them very similar. The same tired headline, the same stock images, or same kind of stock images, the same layout, lacking in customer testimonials. There's no price calculator, which of course you can get from msppriceguide.com, which is one of my services. There was no call. The call to action was very rarely the live calendar, which is best practice for people to book a 15-minute interview. And they all felt the same and all looked the same. And you've just given us one completely different approach there to differentiate the business just at the website level, which is actually look at what are the core problems they have that are holding them back, or a separate approach is what do they fear moving from one MSP to another? Because we know that when someone gets onto your website, they're already in the research phase and they're thinking of switching MSPs. That's why something like an IT services buyer's guide is such a smart thing to have on your website, which you can, again, plug, you can get from the MSPmarketingedge.com. You've got to do it, haven't you, Carl, right?
Absolutely.
But someone would only go on your website if they're thinking of switching to you. So what if your differentiation was right from the get-go of, are you scared of these things? Because we know that people don't want to leave their MSP. They're scared of switching. Inertia loyalty keeps them with an MSP they don't like. So why don't you address that up front? I think that's a really, really smart idea. Let's wrap up what we're talking about here with a sort of a quick fire for you. So
sure.
I think you and I could talk about differentiation for hours, but I want to just throw in some other random ideas. So you work with all of these home service businesses. Throw out for us right now things that you see, whether that be tactics, strategies, small things, big things, paid or organic, paid or free or whatever, stuff you're seeing right now that's working. And let's see if we can just see if any of those would apply to MSPs and could be an idea that we would perhaps have never thought of.
Yeah, I can think of one right off the top of my head. Local service pages. You were talking about serving different counties and different areas. People search. So I'm 56, and one of the fascinating things to me that I really love to look at is just data of how people search. And so for me, my generation searches city service. So I live near Cedar Park, Texas. Cedar Park plumber, Cedar Park HVAC company, AC repair is what we call it in Texas, because it's only hot here. It doesn't really get cold. So we never talk about heaters. So I'm looking for Cedar Park. But what has happened over the last 15 years, evidently, is that it's shifted. Now it's service city. That's how the majority of homeowners search now. And so, number one, understand how your market searches. That's number one. Number one, do not use industry terms and jargon when you're thinking about keywords. Don't build your content based on how you think of it. I call it lead a horse to water content. So your concept you might have some technical concept that's really important that the customer call it a ASW-1. because if they don't, then blah, 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 whatever. I'm making stuff up here.
Yeah.
So, but they might call it a water well, right? And they come in on water well, right? But you lead them over to the idea, actually, what you want to call this is an ASW1. And so there's that kind of content. But the what people fear about, like in Texas, one of the things, this is a no license state. And so roofers are big about being scam artists, unfortunately, because I can come to your house, get a check for $7,000 or $8,000, throw a couple of guys on your roof, tear off some shingles. Hey, we'll be back tomorrow. Never come back.
Wow,
that's not uncommon whatsoever. So the first fear, my neighbor Sam over here got ripped off by a roofer the other day. So the first thing I'm thinking when I call you is, I don't want that to happen, right? So I might have content on my website that says, here's how you understand a roofing scam. If they ask you for money up front and blah, blah, blah. So what are your top 5 fears that you're facing? That's number one. The other one is the location piece. So like I was talking about before, Cedar Park, roofers, Cedar Park. If you want to build a page with that, and what the mistake people make all the time is they put services as the divider. So my MSPwebsite.com, and then when I go to list my services, it's /services. Well, what most people don't understand is that's a keyword. Nobody goes online looking for MSP services and searches services. They're searching for managed service providers. They're searching for outsourced IT, right?
Yeah.
What are some other common keywords in that space?
So actually, a managed service provider is internal jargon. So IT support is what ordinary people call it, as a great example. But yeah, you're right. They might be searching for cybersecurity. They might be searching for they might be searching for specific problems. Often it's a problem based approach. But that's a really good example.
So then IT services Birmingham. I know I'm probably not pronouncing that right. But
no, you're right. You're spot on.
Okay.
for Alabama or the UK, I think you're right with that one.
Well, in Texas, we say Birmingham. We spend a lot more time on the ham in Texas.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you want to have that in the actual URL. So mywebsite.com /MSP services, maybe IT services, whatever makes the most sense, /IT services Birmingham. That's how you want to build that page. And that alone will get you traffic. And guess what? Every single person who looks up IT services Birmingham is interested in buying IT services in Birmingham.
Yeah.
But every person who looks up IT services isn't necessarily a buyer, right? But once they attach a location name to it, that's a buyer. And so now your exposure to in front of buyer ready or people ready to buy goes way up. Those pages are way easier to rank because you're not fighting with every .com out there. You're only fighting with people that are tagged to that page, and most people don't do it. So it's an easy win. It's an easy win.
Yeah, I love that. That's such great advice. Thank you so much, Kyle. So just for those MSPs that you mentioned sales training a couple of times that you do, which, and obviously sales training that you would do would be completely applicable to MSPs. So for those MSPs that want to have a chat with you about that or just reach out to you and connect with you, what's the best way to get in touch?
My website, frontburnermarketing.net. Frontburnermarketing.net, like a front burner on your stove. Sometimes I talk too fast and it comes out as front runner, but it's front burner on your stove.net. Just reach out there. LinkedIn and Facebook, I'm the Kyle Bailey. But you can reach me at any of those places. And look for my book here in a couple of weeks. What's Your Story?
For MSPs around the world, the MSP Marketing Podcast with Paul Green.